From Idaho's News Channel 7, this is Viewpoint.
Around 1:45 in the afternoon on Monday, July 18th, a huge plume of thick black smoke rose above the Boise Bench. A fire fueled by tons of donated clothing and household goods was tearing through the Idaho Youth Ranch distribution center's outside yard. Over the next several hours and into the next morning, firefighters poured 638,000 gallons of water on the fire. Fire investigators ruled the cause of the fire undetermined. Boise Fire says they couldn't pinpoint a cause because of the amount of water used and because they had to remove items from the area where the fire started in order to put out the flames. A devastating loss for the youth ranch. The fire destroyed everything outside and smoke damaged everything inside the nearly 100,000 square foot warehouse, meaning it all has to be thrown away. Now, youth ranch leaders are looking forward to rebuilding the facility and restocking their shelves and racks. And welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. The Idaho Youth Ranch is a nonprofit that offers emergency shelter, residential care, youth and family therapy, job readiness training, adoption services, and more for kids and their families. It relies heavily on its 24 thrift stores around the state for funding for its youth programs and services. The damaged distribution center provides a large chunk of the goods those stores sell. Youth Ranch CEO Scott Curtis doesn't have an exact figure, but says the loss of donated clothing and household items is in the millions. We recently got our first look at the extensive damage. While Scott Curtis showed me around, he talked about that crazy afternoon, the loss they suffered, and how they plan to move forward. Scott, first of all, can you just describe to us, what we're seeing here that's left?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. This is the outside of our main distribution center. And so this is an area where we stored extra product. Also, we take all textiles, clothing that we aren't able to sell, and we bale that and are able to sell it as a commodity. So this was the outside yard where a lot of that was stored. And then back to my right was where the covered overhang, the steel overhang ran the length of the yard.
So so it came all the way to this area here, or even
Yeah,
farther?
so we're right outside the outlet store and the distribution center, and the fire started right out here, and then it spread really in seconds and a few minutes to cover the entire outdoor yard. And then the steel covering actually all melted. All the girders and the roof melted and collapsed on top of the burning material.
And is that what's like right over here?
Yeah, these are the concrete columns. You see the concrete columns left. There were steel posts that held the steel roof overhang on the outside yard. And then to my left is our main distribution center, and you can see that the wall of that was significantly damaged, and we are just so thankful that the first responders were able to keep the fire from breaching this building.
Yeah, we see the sprinklers going back here. Why are those still on?
Those have been left on for, these 1,200-pound bales of clothing that were all ready to be shipped. Those created like fire briquettes from this thing. So we've needed to keep making sure that no other fire starts out here.
Scott, how devastating is this? I mean, have you even been able to calculate how much product you've lost?
Yeah, well, the first thing that impacts the devastation is we had 0 loss of life and no staff members injured as they evacuated. And I keep repeating that because it really is an incredible part of this story. The financial devastation is pretty significant. We've lost all of the materials out here that burnt, but also the smoke, because it entered our warehouse in thick clouds, it has actually made everything inside the warehouse not usable. So that year's worth of inventory I talked about is all lost.
And we'll go in there in a little bit and check out, just to give people an idea of how much you've lost. But how crazy was that morning? Can you describe what happened when you realized that there was a fire?
Sure.
And a big plume of smoke started?
Yeah, I mean, I got a call. It was about 1:45, and people were evacuating the buildings, and walked outside, and the fire had just started down here. And we had staff evacuate. It's a pretty large campus. They were evacuating in all directions. And that was the first concern, right? And the fires moved so quickly. I mean, by the time the fire department came, this entire yard, this is probably 3/4 an acre, the entire yard was ablaze with 30 to 40 foot flames. And we really didn't have any idea how they were going to be able to save any of the buildings, but they really fought this thing. So the immediate aftermath was making sure every staff member had gotten out and that every bathroom had been checked and everything. And our staff were so fast at getting out. And then it was mustering the staff. There was some complexity because this shut down all of the roads around here. So staff couldn't leave, they couldn't access their cars, but also no one could get here to pick folks up. And we have a lot of staff working here that don't have their own transportation, and they need support. So it was about 3 or 4 hours of waiting till we could get out of here. Inside this building is where we have stored really up to a year's worth of goods. Our distribution process, because it's so advanced, allows us to take the donations when people give them to us, but that may not be the right season for selling them, and we're able to coordinate that, so we have up to a year's worth of goods in this building.
Scott, all this stuff looks pristine, but you've got to get rid of all of it?
Yeah, the inspectors came through and tested it, and they said the materials all have to go. We can't sell them.
How much is in here?
From a volume standpoint, I can't tell you, but from a value standpoint, probably a couple $1 million.
And you said it's about a year's worth of materials?
Yeah, it depends on the materials, right? So right now is not the time for winter coats to be in the stores. So we have all the winter coats stored for next year, and we have all the spring things stored for next spring. What we're light on in here right now is the summer items. So that's kind of how the process works.
And for safety, we're wearing these masks right now
Right.
because of the inspectors saying that the fumes.
Yeah, so right now we aren't allowed to have any of our staff in any of these buildings, including all of our administrative buildings. That's the other piece that's really been challenging with this, is all of our administrative function, our development office, our HR, our accounting, our buildings and properties, and all of our e-commerce divisions. Those are all located here as well, and all of those offices were so filled with smoke that that's having to be mitigated.
How long do you think it'll be until they'll be able to be back in?
I can't answer that. We're really trying to get the scope of work clarified and working with our insurance carrier to see how that can get done.
So what do you see as in the near future as far as getting back to capacity?
I think our staff team is pretty phenomenal. So I know that with this offsite warehouse, they're going to be functioning pretty well, keeping our thrift store operations back and in the day and stocked so that our shoppers are having their regular experience. I think once we're able to get back to the full distribution center, it'll take a year to a year and a half for us to be back stocked for the materials that we had in here.
Just the scope of how huge this warehouse is and that everything has to go.
Yeah, this is about
sad.
80. This is about 80,000 square feet of clothing and household goods in this warehouse, constantly being moved. It is sad, and part of what's sad for us is one of the things we love about the Youth Ranch is so many of our communities trust us to reuse their goods. It keeps these goods out of the landfill. It offers them at low prices to people that need them, and people feel good having their stuff reused. So we really feel terrible, and we know people are going to help us build it back up. But also, I think it really educates the community on how much their goods are valued and how many ways we have to reuse them. You know, for example, clothing, we try to sell it in stores, in an outlet store, and then even after that, we bale it and sell it to other countries. So we really find many ways to keep things in the system and out of the landfill.
I can see that gets you a little bit emotional thinking about
Oh, sure.
that impact.
Oh, sure, and it's not just the people's regular goods, but you know, folks donate to our stuff, their treasures, right? When their family members pass away, they trust the Youth Ranch to help use those goods to maximize our mission in a way that makes them feel good about their loved ones' things being used again. And so we're pretty devastated right now that we've lost this, but we know we'll rebuild it.
Do you still have staff who haven't been able to come back to work?
Yes, we do. We have many of our staff have been redeployed in our stores, and this week we're actually opening a alternative distribution warehouse. We're going to be sharing about that soon. So all of the staff that were employed here, we've kept them paid and kept them active in any way we can, and they'll be back working at that alternative warehouse.
And I understand you have kind of a partnership with the Interfaith Sanctuary?
Yeah, Jody Peterson of Interfaith contacted me immediately after this, along with many others. We've had a lot of people reach out. Interfaith, as you know, owns the old Salvation Army building on State Street, and they offered to allow us to use that as a temporary warehouse because they're not beginning construction on that until next spring.
And is that the location you were talking about?
That's the location where, our staff team is in there setting up right now.
How helpful is that?
It's phenomenal. I mean, so one of the things about our thrift business, because we have such a footprint of stores, the distribution center is critical. The product is brought here, distributed, and resorted and sent out to all of those places. Right now, our stores, as many people know, have not been able to take donations because we haven't had the warehouse to process them. So that's going to allow us to start taking donations again and keep all of our full stores fully operational, supporting the mission.
How many stores do you have?
We have 24 thrift stores.
Around the state?
Around the state.
And I think I heard 13 in the Treasure Valley?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So you haven't been able to take any donations up to this point. When do you anticipate that you'll be able to start that up again?
This coming Sunday, we believe we'll be taking donations.
What do you need?
Well, the first thing we need is community support, as always, and that's the thing that I mean, even from the moment we knew that was going to happen. So people are reaching out saying, how can we support you? They know there's a financial challenge right now. All of our service programs to youth and families are sustained through thrift. So people are being very generous. That's really helpful. We also need people's patience. Our stores haven't been able to take their donations, and people have been great about that. When we open up, they're not going to be able to process everything as efficiently. So there's going to be certain times of day or certain days that we can't take everything.
And finally, Scott, out here, what is the plan for this location?
Great question. So the immediate first thing is the disaster removal. It's the removal of all the material you see that's burned and all the removal inside of the buildings. Then there's another inspection of all of the facilities to make sure that the buildings are all structurally sound. And then we get to move into how do we reopen this and rehab the buildings and also make some improvements for the future.
But you do plan to have this be your outside yard again, or at least a facility of that type?
This facility will be fully operational. I can't speak to exactly where the outside yard will be.
And just to reiterate, the individual Youth Ranch thrift stores have remained open. Curtis says those stores are now able to start taking donations again, and that's because Interfaith Sanctuary Homeless Shelter has offered the use of its new location on State Street as that temporary warehouse. Curtis also says that will allow them to keep their staff fully employed. He says it will take 1.5 years to maybe 2 years to be fully stocked up again in the warehouse, but they'll be running at full capacity in their stores very soon. And as the Youth Ranch deals with the devastation of the fire and moves forward with rebuilding, it's also building onto its future in a different way. A brand new facility is taking shape on its Canyon County campus that will eventually help a lot of Idaho children. That's coming up next on Viewpoint. Welcome back to Viewpoint. I'm Doug Petcash. The fire at the distribution center is certainly a setback, but it happened during what is an exciting time for the Idaho Youth Ranch. Construction has been underway on what will be the nonprofit's new psychiatric residential treatment facility on its property near Middleton in Canyon County. It's called the Residential Center for Healing and Resilience. As our media partners at the Idaho Press reported, the Idaho Youth Ranch raised $27 million in private funding to build it. It will provide residential treatment to 100 kids a year, and it's scheduled to open in the summer of 2023. Joining me now to talk about the new treatment facility and the overall mission of the Idaho Youth Ranch is Youth Ranch Vice President of Marketing and Communication, Jeff Myers. Jeff, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Well, let's look at the umbrella first. What is the Idaho Youth Ranch and what kind of services does it provide?
You know, folks oftentimes, Doug, think of us as a thrift store because that's the visible part that they see every day. But what they don't see is the kids' programs behind the scenes. And so that's the youth part of Idaho Youth Ranch. And so we provide both outpatient therapy to the kids in the Treasure Valley and around the state, as well as we have Hayes House, Idaho Youth Ranch Hayes House here in the Treasure Valley that provides a safe place and therapy and treatment for kids who are runaway, homeless, or otherwise don't have a place to go.
Is it like an emergency shelter?
It is an emergency shelter, and it's the only unaccompanied 24/7 shelter in the Treasure Valley.
What age range do you serve?
We serve kids from 8 to 24, but most of them are in that teenage years.
Okay. What types of issues are your clients dealing with when they come to you for help?
It really is a wide variety, and most of the kids that come to us, they've experienced a lot of trauma, as we would call them, adverse childhood experiences in their lives. And so whether it's anxiety, severe anxiety disorders, depression, anger issues, things like a lot of those kids are expressing suicidality. A lot of them are doing self-harm. And so these are kids who are really in a difficult place when they come to us.
And so what kinds of therapies do you offer them? You know, it is the Youth Ranch.
Yep.
And you closed the ranch in Burley several years ago. But do you still offer that type of ranch therapy experience?
Yeah, so in addition to our office-based therapies, outpatient therapies we provide, one of the unique things we provide is equine-assisted psychotherapy to kids and families. And so that was actually the first construction that happened at our new property out in Canyon County. And so we have been, for the last several years, been able to provide that to kids in the Treasure Valley.
Well, let's talk about the new construction then that is going out there, the building of this psychiatric residential treatment facility. What is it going to be able to offer to Idaho kids?
You know, we are so excited for this to open, and the need for this is just tremendous. So one of the things we know today is there are no places for kids to go. There are no accredited facilities in the state of Idaho for kids who need more than what they can get from the outpatient therapy. And so those kids that need that long-term treatment, 3 to 9 months, the answer for them is to be sent out of state, far away from families and their familiar elements for them. And the research shows that unfortunately the long-term outcomes for those kids are diminished because the important elements are involved in a family in the treatment process. Continuity of therapists after they're discharged, being able to connect them to their local school district and other programs. And if your kid is sent all the way to Georgia for treatment, it's really hard for those things to happen. So right now, over 100 Idaho kids are scattered around this country, far away from those support pieces. So we're gonna bring them home, not just to the first facility of this kind in Idaho, but we've been able to research what works best all around the country, the different therapeutic models, the way the buildings are constructed to support that, and this will truly be a national leading facility right here in the Treasure Valley.
So what will be in the building then? Specifically, what kinds of rooms and...
Yep. So one of the first decisions in this was that instead of having group rooms, bedrooms, and things that are so common, is each child will have their own individual room. And so, and it is also designed, when people think of residential, psychiatric residential treatment facility, the first thing that comes to their heads is
right?
Hospital-like. This is designed to look like home. And so for these kids, we've talked about while we were raising the money, this concept of bringing Idaho's kids home. We're bringing them home, but also to a very home environment. And while this won't be their long-term home, it will feel like the kind of home that they should have that supports them. So there's the residential buildings with their individual rooms and common areas. There's a year-round school to help them get caught up on their education. There's also a gymnasium and fitness area so that they can give the activities year-round. Of course, the cafeteria, full commercial kitchen. There is a therapy and wellness center as well that will allow them to experience a variety of different treatment modalities and get the help they need to succeed.
It's all encompassing, and it starts
is.
with them feeling comfortable there, right? I mean, that's the whole idea behind the individual rooms that look like home.
It does, and you know, they need to, you know, for so many of these kids, it's an opportunity for them to really experience the love and the care and the support that they have desperately been craving.
You mentioned Bring Idaho Kids Home, and that was kind of the name of the campaign that you used to raise the money for this facility, right? But 120 kids outside of the state, able to bring them back in. Let's talk a little bit of the history here. I think it was 7 years ago that the Youth Ranch decided to close the original ranch that was 10 or 12 miles outside of Burley. Why was that decision made?
You know, the most important reason for it, and there's a number of reasons from facility issues and everything else, but the most important reason is we know that it's really important for us to have outstanding staff to help work with these kids on a day in, day out basis. And we found that, you know, at the location we were at, it was really hard to get people to commit to live in that area. And so we knew for the long term, we needed to be in an area where we were able to hire the staff in an area that folks are going to be excited to live and raise their own families.
And so that's why the Canyon County property works well for the future of the Youth Ranch?
Absolutely, and it's both remote enough that it's an environment in and of itself, and we're able to have it in a beautiful wooded green environment, but at the same time, it's close enough that it's a short drive from Boise or any other point in the Treasure Valley.
You mentioned the equine center there, as well as the new treatment facility that's being built. Is there anything else on the property or planned for the property?
One of the things we'll be adding to that also is housing for the parents and families. So we know that, and for many of them will be local here in the Treasure Valley, and so it'll just be a drive to come out and get involved in their youth therapy. But we also know we'll be treating kids from different parts of the state, and we don't want anything cost for them to be a barrier of having to worry about staying in a hotel when they come down and spend time in therapy. So we'll be able to, in the future, house them right on site.
It's kind of like that Ronald McDonald House type of philosophy where the parents are right there and everything's taken care of for them as well.
That family model is so important to kids' success.
Yeah. And is it the summer of 2023 when you're anticipating that you'll be able to start bringing in the first residential clients?
Yes. So summer of 2023, the first kids should begin arriving. Of course, in the environment we've all been in, we know there's sometimes challenges in scheduling with construction, but
supply chain issues, right?
Yeah, exactly. But we fully expect at this point we'll be bringing the first kids in summer of 23.
And that is going to be obviously something that really helps out in a big way, bringing these Idaho kids home. And, I think it's been great, Jeff, to be able to, really lay out what the Youth Ranch does so that people know when they donate their clothing or their furniture or they buy it from the thrift store, how that money is being spent. So thank you for that. And speaking of that, we'll be right back with what you can do to help out the Idaho Youth Ranch in its time of need. Stay tuned. Today we've been focusing on how the Idaho Youth Ranch is bouncing back after a devastating fire at its Boise distribution center, plus its overall mission, what it does to help Idaho kids and families. Youth Ranch Vice President of Marketing and Communication, Jeff Myers, is with me. And Jeff, I talked with CEO Scott Curtis about the importance of what you need to move forward, but it bears repeating. So let's drill into that just a little bit. At this time, with the distribution center down, what do you need from the community?
Doug, thank you for asking that. What we rely upon really a couple of major kind of legs to support the programs that we just talked about. One of those is the stores. The other is financial contributions from individuals and businesses and so forth in the Treasure Valley and around the state. And over the next year, we're going to be much more reliant on those financial contributions to support what we do, because even though we'll be moving into a temporary facility, we're not going to have the capacity we've always had. It's not going to be as efficient as it always has been for us. So number one is folks who are interested in financial supporting the Idaho Youth Ranch. Now is a really important time for that. The second thing is supporting our thrift stores, and whether that's shopping or donating things to those stores. And what we don't want is to be deluged in the next week and few days here with too much for us to handle. So we ask folks to be patient with us.
Spread it out a little bit.
Spread it out a little bit. And if you have an opportunity to focus those donations initially on some of the things that we'll need in the short term, that would be helpful too.
Meaning like heading into fall and into winter, right? Keep in mind, like people might start needing sweatshirts, sweaters, and then winter
coats and all those things. So if people can focus on those things initially, that would mean a lot to us.
And that's just basically because of a space capacity that you have to be able to move things through, right?
Yes, and we had already built up all the inventory of the coats and sweaters and pants for fall and winter, and those were all destroyed. And so we've got to start over with those things.
And we just have a couple seconds left. How can people donate?
Go to youthranch.org.
That's short and sweet. Youthranch.org, everyone. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time and for really explaining what the Youth Ranch does and what it needs, after the devastating fire.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome. And that's all of our time for this week's Viewpoint. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you later today on the Sunday News at 5 and 10, and right back here next Sunday morning for another Viewpoint.